Patricia Caldwell thought she was the ultimate chess master. She had spent years manipulating her son's life, convinced that wealth and bloodline were the only things that mattered. She destroyed the only woman her son ever truly loved because she wasn't society material. But Patricia made a fatal error. Driven by spite, she sent a wedding invitation to that very ex-girlfriend, hoping to rub her face in the dirt one last time. She didn't expect her to show up. She certainly didn't expect her to arrive in a helicopter. And she absolutely didn't expect her to walk out with two identical blonde-haired children who looked exactly like the groom. What started as a wedding was about to turn into an execution of the Caldwell legacy. Sit down and get comfortable. The tea is piping hot today. The envelope was heavy. Cream-colored cardstock, textured like linen with gold leaf calligraphy that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. It sat on the sleek black glass surface of Audrey Miller's desk like a venomous snake waiting to strike. Audrey didn't need to open it to know who it was from. The scent of heavy, cloying lavender perfume, Chanel No. 5, mixed with pure narcissism, wafted from the paper. It was the scent of Patricia Caldwell. Audrey spun her chair around, looking out the floor-to-ceiling windows of her office. From the 45th floor, the skyline of Chicago looked like a circuit board of gold and steel. 3 years ago, she had been a waitress struggling to pay for nursing school. Now she was the CFO of Miller & Co., a logistics empire she had built alongside her silent partner. She spun back around and slit the envelope open with a letter opener. Mr. Ethan Caldwell and Miss Jessica Banks. Request the honor of your presence. Audrey laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. Ethan was getting married, and not just to anyone, to Jessica Banks, the daughter of a senator. The perfect match Patricia had always screamed about during Sunday dinners, where Audrey was made to feel like the help. But inside the main envelope there was a smaller handwritten note. The handwriting was jagged and aggressive. Audrey, I thought you should come and see what a real woman looks like, standing next to my son. Perhaps you can take notes for your next failure of a relationship. Do try to dress appropriately, though I know that's difficult for people of your background. Patricia. Audrey's grip on the card tightened until her knuckles turned white. The audacity was breathtaking. Patricia had single-handedly destroyed Audrey's relationship with Ethan 3 years ago. She had planted lies, intercepted messages, and eventually threatened to cut Ethan off from the family trust, if he didn't dump the gold-digging waitress. Ethan, weak-willed and terrified of poverty, had folded. He broke up with Audrey via a text message while she was in the maternity ward, unaware she was there for a checkup. He didn't know she was pregnant. He blocked her number before she could tell him. Audrey had packed her bags, left the city, and sworn she would never look back. She raised her children alone. She built her fortune alone. She survived the sleepless nights and the terrifying fevers alone. Ms. Miller. Audrey looked up. Her assistant Sarah was standing in the doorway, holding a tablet. The helicopter is fueled for the trip to the Hampton site inspection. Also, the nanny called Noah and Lily are asking if you're coming home for lunch. Audrey looked at the photo on her desk. 2 beautiful 3-year-old toddlers with curly blonde hair and piercing blue eyes. Ethan's eyes. A slow, dangerous smile spread across Audrey's face. She looked back at the invitation. Sarah, Audrey said, her voice smooth as silk. Cancel the site inspection and tell my stylist I need a dress. Something red. Something that says, I own the building you're standing in. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Special occasion. You could say that, Audrey murmured, flicking the invitation onto the desk. "I've been invited to a funeral. They just don't know they're dead yet." The wedding was to be held at the Gilded Orchard, a historic estate in upstate New York. It was old money territory, the kind of place where people judged you by the year of your wine and the thread count of your suit. For Patricia Caldwell, this wedding was her coronation. She was finally merging the Caldwell shipping fortune with the bank's political dynasty. She had won. Or so she thought. Audrey picked up her phone and dialed a number. "Michael. It's Audrey. You know that outstanding debt the Caldwell family has with your bank, the one they're trying to refinance before the wedding." She paused, listening to the voice on the other end. "Yes. I want to buy the debt, all of it. Today." She hung up the phone and leaned back. Patricia wanted a show. She was going to get a performance that would be talked about for generations. The wedding day was picture perfect. The sky was a painfully bright blue, the kind that rich people seemed to be able to buy. The lawn of the Gilded Orchard was manicured to within an inch of its life. White roses were everywhere, thousands of them, creating an archway that smelled of money and tradition. Patricia Caldwell stood at the entrance of the reception tent, holding a glass of champagne. She was wearing a silver gown that cost more than Audrey's old apartment. She looked regal stiff and utterly pleased with herself. "Patricia, darling, the setup is divine," a socialite cooed, kissing the air near Patricia's cheek. "Only the best for Ethan." Patricia said, her eyes scanning the crowd. "We have the senator here, the governor. It's a gathering of elites, no riffraff today." Ethan Caldwell stood near the altar, adjusting his bow tie. He looked handsome in that classic, effortless way. But his eyes were tummed. He looked like a man playing a role he hadn't auditioned for. He exchanged a nervous glance with his best friend, toxic bachelor Ryan Cole. "Cheer up, man," Ryan whispered. "You're marrying a Banks. You're set for life." "Yeah," Ethan muttered. "Set." He hadn't thought about Audrey in months, or so he told himself. But every time he saw a woman with dark chestnut hair, his heart jumped. He pushed the thought away. His mother was right. Audrey was a waitress. This was his world. Suddenly, the low thrum of an engine cut through the classical string quartet's performance. Guests looked up, shielding their eyes from the sun. The sound grew louder, a rhythmic thwack, thwack, thwack that vibrated in their chests. Is that part of the ceremony?" Jessica Banks asked, stepping out from the bridal waiting area. She was adjusting her veil, looking annoyed. A sleek midnight black helicopter banked over the trees. It wasn't a news chopper or a medical transport. It was a private luxury Sikorsky, the kind corporate raiders used. On the side, in gold letters, was the logo M&C Logistics. The wind from the rotors whipped the tablecloths and messed up the elaborately sprayed hairdos of the socialites. Patricia shrieked, clutching her hat. "What is the meaning of this?" Patricia screamed, signaling for security. "Get them out of here!" The helicopter descended, landing smoothly on the far side of the great lawn, the only spot flat enough. The engine whined down. The entire wedding party froze. 300 guests turned their heads in unison. The pilot jumped out and opened the passenger door. First, a pair of red-bottomed Louboutin stilettos hit the grass, then long-toned legs. Then a woman emerged. She was wearing a blood-red dress silk and fitted with a slit that went dangerously high up her thigh. It was aggressive, stunning, and completely inappropriate for a wedding where guests were told to wear pastels. She wore oversized sunglasses and a wide-brimmed black hat. A gasp ripped through the crowd. "Is that—" Ethan squinted. His heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. But the woman didn't walk toward them immediately. She turned back to the helicopter and held out her hands. A small boy jumped down. He was wearing a miniature tuxedo tailored to perfection. Then a small girl. She was wearing a flower girl dress that looked like it was made of spun gold. The woman took their hands. She adjusted her sunglasses, lifted her chin, and began the long walk across the lawn toward the altar. As she got closer, the murmurs turned into silence. A deadly, suffocating silence. Audrey Miller removed her sunglasses. Her makeup was flawless, her expression unreadable. She looked like a goddess of vengeance. Patricia dropped her champagne glass. It shattered on the stone path, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Audrey stopped 10 feet from Patricia. The twins Noah and Lily stood quietly by her side, holding their mother's hands tight. They looked around with wide, curious eyes. "Hello, Patricia," Audrey said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried across the silent lawn. "Thank you for the invitation. You were right. I really did need to see this." Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish. She looked at Audrey, then down at the children. She looked at the boy who had the exact same nose as Ethan, the exact same chin. Ethan stepped off the altar, stumbling slightly. He walked past his mother, past his bride, drawn like a moth to a flame. He stopped in front of the twins. He looked at Noah. It was like looking in a mirror from 25 years ago. "Audrey," Ethan whispered, his voice cracking. Who are they?" Audrey looked at Ethan, her eyes cold. "These are my children, Ethan. Noah and Lily." "Are they?" Ethan couldn't finish the sentence. "Yours?" Audrey laughed. "Biologically?" "Yes, in every other way that matters, no. They are mine. I just brought them so they could see what a coward looks like before they grow up." You harlot." Patricia found her voice. She marched forward, her face turning a violent shade of purple. "How dare you crash this wedding? How dare you bring these bastards here? Security, remove her." "I wouldn't do that if I were you, Patricia," Audrey said calmly. She reached into her clutch and pulled out a folded document. "Why not?" Patricia hissed. "This is private property. This is the Caldwell estate." Audrey smiled. It was the smile of a predator who had already eaten and was just playing with the bones. "Actually," Audrey said, unfolding the paper, "it was the Caldwell estate until about 20 minutes ago. You see, Patricia, you defaulted on the balloon payment for the mortgage 3 months ago. The bank was about to foreclose. I stepped in." Audrey held up the deed. "I bought the debt, and since you missed the grace period deadline at noon today, this house, this lawn, and this wedding venue belong to me." Audrey looked down at the twins. "What do you think, Noah? Should we let them finish the party, or should we turn the sprinklers on?" The crowd erupted into chaos. The silence that had gripped the gilded orchard shattered instantly. It started with a low murmur like the buzzing of angry bees and quickly escalated into a roar of confusion and scandal. Phones were out everywhere. The live streams were starting. Patricia Caldwell's nightmare had gone vul before she could even take her next breath. "You're lying!" Patricia screeched, her face a mask of panic and malice. She pointed a shaking finger at Audrey. "Security!" "Why are you standing there? Arrest this trespasser. She forged that document. She's a fraud." The head of security, a burly man named Henderson, who had worked the estate for a decade, hesitated. He looked at Patricia, then at Audrey. Audrey didn't flinch. She simply held the legal deed out toward him. "Mr. Henderson, isn't it? I believe the signature on the foreclosure transfer is authenticated by the state notary. As of 12:01 p.m. I am the owner of this property. If you forcibly remove me, I will have you charged with assault and sue this security firm into bankruptcy. However, she paused, lowering her sunglasses to look him in the eye. If you escort Mrs. Caldwell off my property, I might consider keeping you on the payroll, with a raise. Henderson didn't need to think twice. He knew the Caldwells were drowning in debt. His last 3 paychecks had bounced before finally clearing. He took a step away from Patricia. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Caldwell," Henderson rumbled. "I need to see the paperwork." "You traitor!" Patricia shrieked. While Patricia melted down, the real drama was unfolding at the altar. Ethan hadn't moved. He was staring at the 2 children who were clinging to Audrey's red dress. The boy Noah looked back at him with a scowl that mirrored Ethan's own father, a man Ethan had barely known. "Ethan." The voice was sharp, cutting through Ethan's trance. It was Jessica Banks, the bride. Jessica had ripped off her veil, tossing the expensive lace onto the grass like a used tissue. Her face, usually composed for the cameras, was twisted in fury. "Ethan," Jessica repeated, stepping in front of him to block his view of Audrey. "Care to explain why your ex-girlfriend, the one you said was a nobody, just landed a helicopter on my wedding cake and claims you're the father of her twins? I didn't know." Ethan stammered, his face pale. "Jess, I swear, I haven't seen her in 3 years. 3 years? Jessica did the math quickly. She looked at the toddlers. They were roughly 3 years old. "So you got her pregnant and then dumped her to date me?" "No. I mean, we broke up before I knew." "You broke up with me," Audrey corrected from 10 feet away. Her voice was cool, cutting through their argument like a knife. "Or rather, you sent me a text message telling me I wasn't breeding stock for the Caldwell name. Do you remember that Ethan I was 4 months pregnant? I called you 50 times. You blocked my number." "I never sent that text," Ethan shouted, stepping around Jessica. The desperation in his voice was palpable. "Audrey, I never said that I loved you." "Don't lie to her," Patricia interjected, rushing over, trying to regain control of the narrative. "Jessica, darling, don't listen to this slattern. She's clearly hired those children. They're actors. Look at them. They're wearing cheap suits." Audrey laughed, a dark, rich sound. "Cheap Noah's suit is bespoke Armani. Lily's dress is custom Dior. My children don't wear off-the-rack Patricia. Unlike you, who I believe is wearing a rental." Patricia gasped, clutching her pearls. "Senator Banks." Jessica's father finally stepped into the fray. He was a large man with silver hair and a face that turned red when he was angry, which was right now. "Enough," the senator bellowed. "This is a circus, Patricia. Is it true? Is this property foreclosed?" Patricia stammered. It's a temporary liquidity issue, Senator. A banking error." "It's not an error," Audrey said, checking her diamond-encrusted watch. "It's a seizure. And frankly, this party is boring me. I'm giving everyone here exactly 30 minutes to vacate the premises before I have the police remove you for trespassing. The helicopter stays, though. I have a meeting in the city at 5. "You can't do this," Jessica screamed, tears finally welling up in her eyes. "My wedding. The press is here. Vogue is covering this. Then I suggest you give Vogue a better story," Audrey said dismissively. She looked down at her son. "Noah, are you hungry? I think I saw a shrimp tower over there." "I want cake," Noah said, pointing a chubby finger at the 5-tier masterpiece. "Then go get some cake, baby." Audrey smiled. It's our cake now. As the twins ran toward the wedding cake, chaos ensued. The guests, realizing the booze and food were about to be cut off, began grabbing bottles of wine and fleeing toward the parking lot. The string quartet packed up their instruments in record time. Ethan ignored the senator, ignored his mother, and ignored his bride. He walked straight up to Audrey. He was close enough to smell her perfume, vanilla and ambition. It was different from the cheap floral scent she used to wear when they were poor students. "Audrey," he pleaded, his voice low. "Please, we need to talk. If those are my kids, I have rights." Audrey's eyes flashed with dangerous fire. "Rights? You forfeited your rights when you let your mother evict me from my apartment 3 years ago. You forfeited your rights when you chose your trust fund over us." "I didn't know." Ethan grabbed her arm. Security guard Henderson stepped forward instantly, hand on his taser. "Hands off the owner, Mr. Caldwell." Ethan recoiled, as if burned. He looked at Audrey. Really looked at her. She wasn't the sweet, shy girl he remembered. She was hardened steel. She was magnificent, and she terrified him. "Inside," Audrey said, her voice dropping to a whisper so only the main players could hear. "The library. You mean the Senator, Jessica, and your mother. 5 minutes. If you want answers, you'll come. If you want to keep screaming on the lawn, I'll have Henderson taser you." She turned and walked toward the mansion, her red dress blazing against the white floral arrangements like a warning flag. The library of the Gilded Orchard smelled of old leather and stale cigar smoke, the scent of generations of Caldwell men who had slowly squandered a fortune. Now Audrey Miller sat behind the massive mahogany desk that used to belong to Ethan's grandfather. She looked entirely at home. Patricia Caldwell paced the room, a nervous wreck. Senator Banks stood by the window furiously texting his PR team to spin the disaster. Jessica sat on a velvet sofa, still in her wedding dress, sobbing quietly. Ethan stood in the center of the room, his eyes fixed on Audrey. The twins were in the hallway with the nanny Audrey had signaled from the helicopter. The room was tense, the air thick with unspoken accusations. "Let's make this quick," Audrey said, leaning back in the leather chair. "I have a board meeting tomorrow." "How?" Ethan asked, his voice shaking. "How did you do all this?" You were working double shifts at the diner. You had nothing." "Necessity is the mother of invention." "Ethan," Audrey said, cold. "When you left me, I had $12 in my bank account. I was pregnant and homeless because someone," she glared at Patricia, "made sure no landlord in the city would rent to me. I had to live in a shelter for 4 months. Ethan looked at his mother, horror dawning on his face. "Mother? You said you gave her a severance check. You said you helped her get set up in Ohio." "I did what was necessary to protect this family," Patricia snapped. "She was a leech, Ethan. She would have dragged you down into mediocrity. I was saving you." "Saving him," Audrey scoffed. "You were controlling him. And it turns out I didn't need your money. I had an idea. I developed a logistics algorithm for shipping routes while I was on bed rest in the shelter. I pitched it to every investor in Chicago. One finally said yes. Miller & Co. isn't just a company, Ethan. It's the backbone of shipping on the East Coast. We handle the logistics for Amazon, FedEx, and half the military." Senator Banks stopped texting and turned around, his eyes widening. "Miller & Co., you're A. Miller. The one who just acquired the docks in Baltimore." "That's me," Audrey said dryly. "Nice to meet you, Senator. I believe I donated to your opponent's campaign. Nothing personal, just business." Jessica looked up, her mascara running down her face. "You're a billionaire." "On paper, yes. In liquid assets also, yes. Audrey tapped the desk. But we aren't here to discuss my portfolio. We're here to discuss the lies. She pulled a sleek smartphone from her clutch. Ethan, you claim you never sent the text. The text that said, and I quote, "Get rid of the thing. I'm not ruining my life for a mistake." Ethan flinched. I never. God, Audrey, I would never call a baby a thing. I loved you. I was going to propose that weekend. Then explain this. Audrey played a recording. It was a voice. Patricia's voice. But she sounded different, younger, sweeter. It was a recording from a phone call. Yes, this is Mrs. Caldwell. I need to clone a SIM card. My son lost his phone. Yes, the number is... The room went silent. I hired a private investigator a year ago, Audrey explained. Once I had the money to afford the best. I wanted to know why the man who claimed to love me turned into a monster overnight. Turns out he didn't. His mummy just stole his identity for a day. Ethan turned slowly toward Patricia. His face was a mask of pure betrayal. You cloned my phone. You sent those texts. You blocked her. I did it for you. Patricia screamed, backing away until she hit the bookshelf. She was trash. Ethan, look at us. We are Caldwells. We marry Bankses. We don't marry waitresses. You evil witch, Jessica spat. The bride stood up, her sadness replaced by disgust. You told me Ethan was over her. You told me she was a crazy stalker who left him. You built my entire relationship on a fraud. Jessica, please, Patricia pleaded. The merger. Think of the merger. To hell with the merger, Jessica yelled. She ripped the diamond ring off her finger and threw it at Ethan. It bounced off his chest and landed on the rug. I'm not marrying into a family of liars and cowards. Daddy, we're leaving. Senator Banks nodded, buttoning his suit jacket. This is a PR nightmare. Patricia, don't ever contact my office again. If you do, I'll have the IRS audit every charity gala you've ever hosted. The senator and Jessica stormed out of the library, slamming the heavy oak doors behind them. Now it was just the three of them, the mother, the son, and the ex-girlfriend who owned the room. Ethan looked broken. He slumped into a chair, putting his head in his hands. I missed it. I missed everything. The pregnancy, the birth, their first steps. Because of you, he whispered, looking at his mother. Because of you. Patricia stammered. She looked at Audrey, expecting mercy. She found none. Get out, Audrey said softly to Patricia. This is my house, Patricia cried. No, Audrey corrected, holding up the deed again. This is my house, and you are trespassing. You have 10 minutes to pack a bag and leave. Henderson is waiting outside to escort you to the gate. I suggest you take an Uber. I've seized the family cars as part of the debt settlement. Patricia looked at Ethan, pleading for help. Ethan, tell her she can't treat your mother like this. Ethan didn't look up. She's not treating my mother like this. She's treating the woman who ruined my life like this. Go, mother, before I ask her to call the cops myself. Patricia let out a sob of pure defeat and ran from the room. Silence descended on the library. The clock on the mantel ticked loudly. Ethan finally looked up at Audrey. His eyes were red. I know I can't ask for forgiveness. I was weak. I should have driven to your apartment. I should have fought harder. I believed the text you sent me, too. She played us both. She did. Audrey agreed, her expression softening just a fraction. But you were the one who gave her the power to do it. You were always afraid of losing your inheritance, Ethan. Well, congratulations. You kept your inheritance and you lost your family. I don't care about the money, Ethan said, standing up. I care about Noah and Lily. Please, Audrey, let me know them. I'll sign whatever you want. I'll renounce the Caldwell name. Just don't keep them from me. Audrey studied him. She saw the pain in his eyes. It was real. But she wasn't the naive girl anymore. She was a CEO, and she negotiated hard. You want to be a father? Audrey asked. Fine, but you do it on my terms. No lawyers, no custody battles. You start from zero. You want to see them, you earn it. How? Ethan asked. First, Audrey said, standing up and smoothing her red dress, you're going to need a job. I hear Miller & Co. is hiring entry-level warehouse managers. It pays $20 an hour. It's hard work, but it's honest. Ethan stared at her. You want me to work in your warehouse? I want to see if you're man enough to work for a living instead of waiting for Mummy to cut a check, Audrey challenged him. Show up Monday at 6:00 a.m. If you're late, you're fired. If you quit, you never see the twins again. She walked around the desk and stopped in front of him. The ball is in your court, Ethan. Do you want to be a Caldwell, or do you want to be a father? Audrey didn't wait for an answer. She turned and walked out of the library to collect her children. She had a helicopter to catch. The alarm clock buzzed at 4:30 a.m. It was a harsh, metallic sound that seemed to mock the small, cramped studio apartment. Ethan Caldwell groaned, rolling off the thin mattress that lay directly on the floor. His back ached. His hands, once manicured and soft, were covered in blisters and small paper cuts. He wasn't in the penthouse anymore. He wasn't at the Gilded Orchard. He was in a walk-up in a gritty part of Queens, living off a paycheck that barely covered rent and instant noodles. Monday, he muttered, rubbing his face. Week 4. He had shown up. That first Monday, he expected Audrey to laugh at him and send him away. Instead, a foreman named Big Mike, a man who looked like he chewed gravel for breakfast, had thrown a neon vest at him and pointed to a mountain of boxes. Scanner is on the table. Quota is 500 units an hour. You miss quota, you get written up. 3 write-ups, you're out. The boss doesn't do nepotism. The boss. That's what everyone called Audrey. Ethan pulled on his steel-toed boots. He took the subway squeezed between a nurse and a construction worker. No one knew he was a Caldwell. No one cared. The Miller & Co. distribution center in New Jersey was a behemoth of steel and automation. It was loud, hot, and smelled of diesel and cardboard. Ethan's job was Order Fulfillment Level 1. It was the bottom of the barrel. By 10:00 a.m., sweat was dripping down his back. His legs burned. He was moving a pallet of heavy electronics when a hush fell over the floor. The ambient noise of the warehouse didn't stop, the machines kept humming, but the workers straightened up. The boss was on the floor. Audrey walked down the center aisle, flanked by 2 executives in suits who struggled to keep up with her pace. She wore a white, hard hat over her impeccable hair, a high-visibility vest over a tailored navy jumpsuit, and heels that clicked ominously on the concrete. She stopped at Ethan's station. Ethan froze, a box half lifted. He wiped sweat from his forehead with his sleeve. He looked like a wreck. Audrey looked fresh, powerful, and terrifyingly beautiful. She glanced at the tablet in her hand, then at the digital counter above Ethan's station. Your pick rate is 512 units per hour, Audrey said, her voice neutral. I'm trying to get it higher. Ethan said, his voice hoarse. The average for this zone is 550, she noted, tapping the screen. You're lagging Caldwell. Efficiency drives profit. Profit secures jobs. Do I need to send you back to training? No, Ethan said, straightening his back. I'll pick it up. Audrey looked at him for a long moment. There was no pity in her eyes, only assessment. See that you do. The twins are coming by for a site tour at lunch. They like seeing the robots. If you make quota by noon, you can join us for 15 minutes in the break room. If you don't, well, there's always next week. She turned on her heel and walked away. The offer hung in the air like a lifeline. 15 minutes. Ethan gritted his teeth. He turned back to the conveyor belt. He didn't just work, he attacked the work. He moved faster than he had ever moved in his life. He ignored the burning in his shoulders. He ignored the hunger in his stomach. At 11:59 a.m., his counter hit 5:51. When he walked into the break room, he was shaking from exhaustion, but he was there. Noah and Lily were sitting at a plastic table, eating slices of pizza. They looked up when he entered. They were wary. To them, he was still the Shet man from the wedding. Hi, Ethan said softly, sitting at the opposite end of the table. Mummy says you work here, Noah said, eyeing Ethan's dirty vest. You lift the heavy boxes. Yeah, Ethan smiled weakly. I lift the heavy boxes, so the trucks can take them to people's houses. Do you have a robot? Lily asked. No, I am the robot, Ethan joked. Lily giggled. It was a small sound, but to Ethan it sounded like a symphony. Audrey watched from the doorway, leaning against the frame, sipping black coffee. She didn't interfere. She didn't help him. She just watched. She saw the way Ethan looked at them, with a hunger that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with connection. He was changing. The arrogance was being sweated out of him, replaced by humility. But outside the warehouse walls, the old world wasn't done with them. Patricia Caldwell was currently living in a motel on the outskirts of the city. Her accounts were frozen, her credit cards declined, and her social circle had exiled her. But Patricia had one thing left her venom. She sat on the stained bedspread, holding a burner phone. She was scrolling through Audrey's Instagram feed, pictures of the twins, the company, the success. Every image felt like a slap in the face. She stole it, Patricia whispered to the empty room. She stole my son. She stole my legacy. She thinks she's won. She dialed a number, a sleazy tabloid journalist she had fed tips to in the past. Jerry, it's Patricia. Yes, I know the wedding was a disaster, but I have a better story for you. A story about a billionaire CEO who is brainwashing her children and abusing the father. I have proof, or at least, I can manufacture it. Patricia's eyes gleamed. If she couldn't have the money, she would burn the reputation. She would paint Audrey Miller as a monster, and then the courts would have to give the children to the grandmother. 2 months passed. Ethan was promoted to team lead of the loading dock. It wasn't an executive role, but it came with a small raise and a clipboard. He had moved out of the studio into a 1-bedroom apartment that actually had a window. He saw the twins twice a week now. Supervised visits. They played in the park, they ate ice cream. They were starting to call him Ethan instead of that man. He was working his way up to Dad. Things were calm. Until the morning, the New York Chronicle hit the stands. Audrey walked into her office feeling good. She had just closed a deal with a major European distributor, but the moment she stepped in, Sarah, her assistant, looked pale. Don't look at the news, Sarah said immediately. Audrey frowned. Why did the stock drop? No, it's... It's personal. Audrey grabbed the tablet from Sarah's desk. Billionaire mom from hell. Exclusive interview with the discarded grandmother. The headline screamed across the screen. Below it was a picture of Patricia looking disheveled and tearful, staged, obviously. The article was a masterpiece of fiction. Patricia claimed Audrey was mentally unstable, that she kidnapped the children from the wedding, and that she was forcing Ethan to work in slave-like conditions in a warehouse as punishment for a breakup years ago. It painted Patricia as the victim of a vindictive new money tyrant. "She's suing," Sarah whispered. "We just got served. Grandparents' rights. And she's filing a petition to have Child Protective Services investigate your home." Audrey felt the blood drain from her face. It wasn't fear, it was rage. Cold, white-hot rage. "She went for the kids," Audrey said quietly. "I took her house, so she goes for my children." Audrey's phone rang. It was the company legal team. "Audrey, this is bad," her lawyer said. "The press is eating it up. Rich Cruella de Vil is trending onto Twitter. Investors are calling. They don't like instability. If CPS gets involved, even if it's baseless, it freezes everything. We need to kill this story." "How?" "We need Ethan," the lawyer said. Patricia's entire argument hinges on the idea that she and Ethan are victims. If Ethan publicly sides with her, you look like a monster. If Ethan sides with you, Patricia looks like a liar. Audrey hung up. She looked out the window. She had tested Ethan in the warehouse. She had tested his work ethic. But she hadn't tested his loyalty. Down in the loading dock, Ethan was staring at his phone. His notifications were blowing up. Friends he hadn't heard from in months were texting him. "Dude, is your ex really torturing you? Call your mum. She's on TV." He watched a clip of his mother on a morning talk show. She was weeping, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "I just want to see my grandbabies," Patricia sobbed on screen. "She won't let me near them. And my poor son. She has him working manual labor. He's a Caldwell. She's trying to break his spirit." Ethan's jaw tightened. He knew that performance. He had seen it 1,000 times. It was the same face she made when she fired the maid for dusting wrong, or when she convinced his father not to give to charity. Caldwell. Ethan turned. Audrey was standing on the loading dock platform. She wasn't wearing her hard hat today. She was wearing a suit that looked like armor. The entire warehouse went silent. Everyone had seen the news. They were watching the drama play out in real time. "Did you know?" Audrey asked, her voice echoing in the cavernous space. "No," Ethan said. He walked toward her. "I swear, Audrey, I haven't spoken to her. She's claiming I'm unfit," Audrey said, her voice shaking slightly. "She's trying to take Noah and Lily. She wants custody, Ethan. She wants to raise them. Think about that. Patricia raising our children." The image hit Ethan like a physical blow. Noah becoming arrogant and cruel. Lily being told she was only worth who she married. The toxicity that had choked him for 30 years, wrapping around his beautiful, innocent children. "She called me," Ethan admitted. Audrey stiffened. "When 10 minutes ago, before I saw the news. What did she say?" "She said if I back her up, if I sign an affidavit saying you're unstable, she has a publisher lined up. A book deal. Millions. She said we could get the estate back. She said we could be Caldwells again." Audrey stared at him. The silence stretched for an eternity. The hum of the conveyor belts seemed to fade away. "And Audrey asked. Is that what you want? The money? The name? The easy life? Ethan looked at his blistered hands. He looked at the cheap watch he had bought at a drugstore because he had pawned his Rolex to pay his first month's rent. He looked at the workers behind him, guys who had invited him for a beer last Friday. Guys who respected him, not because of his last name, but because he stayed late to help fix a jammed sorter. He looked at Audrey, the woman who built an empire from nothing, the woman who raised 2 miracles while he was sipping champagne and being a coward. I don't want to be a Caldwell, Ethan said clearly. He pulled his phone out. What are you doing? Audrey asked. I'm going live, Ethan said. He opened the social media app his mother was using to smear them. He hit broadcast. Hey, Ethan said to the camera. I'm Ethan Caldwell. You've probably seen my mother on the news today. He held the phone up, showing the warehouse behind him, showing Audrey standing there looking fierce and protective. Everything she said is a lie, Ethan said, his voice gaining strength. Audrey isn't keeping me here. I'm here because for the first time in my life, I'm earning my keep. I'm here because I'm trying to be a father my kids deserve. He took a deep breath. My mother isn't a victim. She's a predator. She cut me off from my children for 3 years because she didn't like their mother's tax bracket. She forged messages. She destroyed lives. And now she's trying to use the legal system to hurt the only decent person in this equation. Ethan looked directly into the lens. Mom, if you're watching this, don't come near my kids. If you try to sue for custody, I will testify. I will tell the judge about the supplements you take. I will tell them about the offshore accounts you hid from Dad. I will tell them everything. Leave us alone. He ended the video. The warehouse erupted in cheers. Big Mike slapped Ethan on the back so hard he almost fell over. Audrey didn't cheer. She walked over to him. Her eyes were wet. You just tanked your inheritance, she whispered. If she had any money left stashed away, she just wrote you out of the will. I know, Ethan said. He felt lighter than air. I don't need it. I get paid on Friday. I'm buying the twins' bikes with my money. Audrey smiled. It was the first genuine, warm smile she had given him in 3 years. You're buying them helmets too, she commanded. Come on, lawyer's office. We need to file a restraining order, and your testimony just gave us the silver bullet. Yes, boss, Ethan said. But the war wasn't over. Patricia was cornered, and a cornered snake strikes blindly. She had seen the video. She knew she had lost the public. She knew she had lost her son. Sitting in her motel room, watching the comments on Ethan's video turn against her, Patricia's mind snapped. If I can't have them, she thought, her logic twisted and broken, then nobody can. She reached into her purse and pulled out the spare set of keys she had kept. Not for the house, but for the old vintage convertible Ethan had restored years ago, the one he had sold to a collector, or so he thought. Patricia had blocked the sale and kept it in a storage unit, hoping to bribe him with it one day. She knew the warehouse schedule. She knew Audrey picked the kids up from preschool at 3:00 p.m. on Fridays. One last lesson, Patricia muttered, grabbing her coat. One last lesson in respect. The afternoon sun was blinding as Audrey guided her black Range Rover out of the preschool parking lot. In the back seat, Noah and Lily were excitedly showing Ethan their finger paintings, messy swirls of blue and green that they claimed were Daddy's robot. Ethan sat in the passenger seat, turning back to admire the artwork. For the first time in years, the knot of anxiety in his chest was gone. He had told the truth. He had stood up to the monster. He was broke-tired and blistered, but he felt like a king. "We need to stop by the precinct before the lawyer," Audrey said, checking her mirrors. "My legal team sent the footage over, but we need to sign the formal complaint for the restraining order." "I'm ready," Ethan said firmly. "I'm done protecting her." They turned onto the winding coastal road that led back toward the city. It was a scenic route flanked by a steep drop to the ocean on one side and dense forest on the other. "Audrey," Ethan said, suddenly his voice tight. "Check the rear view." Audrey glanced up. A vintage cherry-red convertible was speeding up behind them. It was weaving erratically, the engine roaring. "Is that?" Audrey squinted. "That's my father's old Jaguar," Ethan said, gripping the dashboard. "She kept it. I knew it." The convertible surged forward, tailgating the SUV inches from the bumper. Audrey could see Patricia behind the wheel. She wasn't wearing sunglasses. Her hair was wild, blown by the wind, her face twisted in a rictus of pure, unadulterated hate. "She's trying to run us off." Audrey realized, her hands tightening on the wheel. "Hold on. Kids, keep your heads back against the seat." Patricia slammed on the horn, a long, wailing sound. She swerved into the oncoming lane, pulling up alongside the Range Rover. "Pull over!" Patricia screamed, her voice snatched away by the wind. She swerved the Jaguar toward them, trying to intimidate Audrey into the guardrail. "She's insane!" Ethan shouted. "Mom, stop!" Audrey didn't panic. She had built a company in a shark tank. She wasn't going to be bullied on the road. She tapped the brakes, letting the Jaguar shoot past them, then accelerated again to put distance between them. But Patricia wasn't stopping. She slammed her brakes, forcing Audrey to screech to a halt to avoid a collision. The Jaguar blocked the road sideways. Patricia scrambled out of the car. She was holding a tire iron. She looked deranged. "Get out!" Patricia shrieked, marching toward the SUV. "Give me my grandchildren. You stole them. You turned my son against me." "Lock the doors," Audrey commanded. She reached for her phone to call 911. Ethan unbuckled his seatbelt. "Ethan, don't," Audrey warned. "I have to end this," Ethan said. "She's not going to stop until she sees me." He opened the door and stepped out. The ocean wind whipped his hair. He stood tall, blocking his mother's path to the car, where his children sat terrified. "Mom, put the iron down," Ethan said calmly. "You ungrateful brat." Patricia swung the iron, hitting the hood of the Range Rover with a sickening clang. "I gave you everything, private schools. The best clothes, and you choose her. A waitress. A nobody." "I chose my family," Ethan said, stepping closer. "And she's not a nobody. She's the mother of your grandchildren. The grandchildren you are currently terrifying. They belong to the Caldwell estate," Patricia screamed, raising the iron again, aiming for the windshield. Ethan didn't flinch. He lunged forward, catching her wrist in mid-air. He wasn't the soft, pampered boy she remembered. He had spent months lifting heavy cargo. His grip was iron. He twisted the weapon out of her hand and tossed it over the guardrail, watching it plummet into the ocean below. "It's over, Mother," Ethan said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Look at you. You're attacking us on a public road. You're done." Patricia stared at him, panting. Then her eyes shifted to the car. She saw Audrey holding up her phone, recording everything. She saw the red light of the dash cam blinking. The realization hit her. This wasn't a private family dispute. This was a felony. Panic replaced the rage. Patricia scrambled back toward her Jaguar. I'm leaving." You'll never hear from me." She jumped into the convertible and gunned the engine. She tried to spin the car around in a tight U-turn, tires smoking, but in her haste she miscalculated. She hit the gas too hard on the gravel shoulder. The vintage car, lacking modern traction control, spun wildly. The rear end clipped the guardrail. The metal shrieked, buckled, and gave way. Audrey screamed. The Jaguar teetered on the edge of the cliff. The rear wheels spun in the air. Gravity took over. "No!" Ethan sprinted forward. The car slid backward. It didn't fall into the ocean. It crashed down onto a lower embankment about 15 feet below, landing upside down in a thicket of brush. Silence fell over the road. "Stay in the car!" Audrey yelled to the kids as she jumped out. She and Ethan ran to the edge. The car was crushed smoke, billowing from the engine. "Call an ambulance!" Ethan yelled, sliding down the steep embankment, tearing his suit pants, ignoring the rocks cutting his hands. He reached the overturned car. Patricia was hanging by her seatbelt, unconscious blood trickling down her forehead. "Mum." Ethan reached in, smelling leaking gas. "We have to get her out. It's going to catch." Audrey was right behind him. She didn't hesitate. She wasn't thinking about the insults, the eviction, or the lies. She was a nurse first. "Support her head," Audrey commanded, reaching in to unbuckle the belt. "On 3. 1, 2, 3. They dragged Patricia out of the wreckage and pulled her away, just as a spark from the engine ignited the fuel line. The Jaguar burst into flames, a fireball of heat that singed their eyebrows. They collapsed on the grass, panting with the unconscious woman between them. Sirens wailed in the distance. 1 year later, the courtroom was quiet. The judge, a stern woman with glasses, looked over the paperwork. Patricia Caldwell sat in a wheelchair at the defense table. She wasn't paralyzed, she had recovered from her injuries, but she looked frail. The fire had taken her vanity. The crash had taken her pride. And the law was about to take her freedom. "Patricia Caldwell," the judge said, "you have pleaded guilty to reckless endangerment assault with a deadly weapon and attempted kidnapping. Due to your age and health, your lawyer has asked for leniency." Patricia looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. "However," the judge continued, her voice hard, "the psychological damage you inflicted on this family and the sheer malice of your actions requires a severe response. You are sentenced to 5 years in a minimum security state facility, followed by 5 years of probation. Furthermore, a permanent restraining order is granted. You are to have no contact with Ethan Caldwell, Audrey Miller, or their children." Patricia slumped in her chair. She looked across the aisle. Audrey sat there wearing a white power suit. Beside her was Ethan. He looked healthy, strong, and content. He held Audrey's hand openly. Patricia realized then that she hadn't just lost the war. She had created an alliance that was unbreakable. As the bailiff wheeled Patricia away, she looked at Ethan one last time. "Ethan," she croaked. Ethan didn't look away, but he didn't smile, and he didn't cry. He simply nodded, a final gesture of closure. Goodbye. Outside the courthouse, the press was waiting. But this time, Audrey didn't stop for interviews. She didn't need to explain herself to anyone. They walked to the parking lot, where a new minivan, practical safe, and definitely not a helicopter, was waiting. "Did you get the email?" Ethan asked as he buckled his seatbelt. "Which one?" Audrey asked, starting the car. "From the board. They approved the new warehouse manager." Audrey smiled. "I heard. They said he's hard-working, honest, and knows the system from the ground up. Congratulations, Mr. Manager." Ethan laughed. "It's a lot of paperwork, but the pay is good. I was thinking, since I have a steady income now, and my credit score is finally recovering. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. It wasn't a massive diamond like the one he had given Jessica. It was a simple, elegant sapphire. "I know we're doing things backward," Ethan said, looking at her. "We had the kids, we had the breakup, we had the war. But I want to do the middle part right. Audrey, will you marry me for real this time? No trust funds, no mothers, just us." Audrey looked at the ring. Then she looked at the man who had pulled his mother from a burning car, but refused to let her burn his life down again. She kissed him. "Ask me again, after we pick up the twins," she whispered. "I want them to see this." Ethan grinned. "Deal." They drove off into the city traffic, just another family in a sea of millions. But they were a family that had walked through fire to find each other, and that made them invincible. Patricia Caldwell sat in a holding cell, listening to the distant sounds of the city. She used to rule, realizing too late that the only currency that truly mattered was love, and she was bankrupt. And that is the story of how a cruel mother tried to destroy her son's happiness, only to accidentally weld his family back together, stronger than ever. Patricia thought wealth was power, but she learned the hard way that true power is standing up for the people you love. I hope you enjoyed this roller coaster of drama, karma, and redemption. It really goes to show that sometimes the best revenge is just living well and letting the haters crash and burn literally. If you enjoyed this story, please smash that like button. It really helps the algorithm share this justice with more people. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story. Do you think Ethan deserved a second chance, or should Audrey have left him in the past? Let me know your honest thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.